time for us to start talking about Steel Path. To unlock Steel Path, you must have done all of the nodes connected to the main star chart plus Saruman. We'll cause our little selector on the right hand side here to appear. If this hasn't appeared for you yet, make sure you've also done all three of the various selections. These are counted as separate parts of the Steel Path, and if that doesn't work, then you will have to just go around and manually check each planet and make sure there are no blue flashy nodes. You should have definitely run a good number of the arbitration missions. This is going to drop you a lot of mods that you are going to need from here. If you aren't following the playlist, make sure you have been running for the corrupted mods. Recommend getting all of the drift mods. Highly recommend going around all of the open world areas and getting all of the mods from there. The auger mods from Earth, some of the tech companion mods from Mercury. Even if you can get here at Mastery Rank 10, that doesn't mean that you should be doing this at Mastery Rank 10. I would recommend getting to at least 14 or 15 so you have access to all of the different weaponry. I recommend going and doing the light stuff, so make sure you've got some Tenet weaponry and some Kuva weaponry at your disposal. The only thing that it is acceptable to not have at this point is arcanes. That is because to unlock the arcane adapters for primary and secondary, you actually need to do Steel Path, which means if you are following the playlist, we have not spoken about arcanes yet because you can't do an arcane guide without having done some Steel Path first. When it comes to getting ready for Steel Path then, it's worth mentioning that we are no longer able to mod our equipment, so Warframes, weapons, even the companions separately anymore. We are going to be creating ourselves loadouts, and I recommend naming them depending on what it is that loadout is supposed to be good for. So in this instance, we are going to create a loadout that will do well on the Lith node on Earth so that we can farm ourselves the Steel Essence and so that we can get all of the rewards that we actually want to get from Steel Path. Note that, like I said before, you can go ahead and progress all of this chart for mastery. It's actually pretty good for getting resources fast if you get good at it. But realistically speaking, you only need to farm a couple of nodes and just gather all of the arcanes and Steel Essence from that one node. That's completely doable. When it comes to starting our loadout then, the first thing that we need to do is work out our sustain and survivability methods. In the case of Octavia here, I've decided that we are going to Helminth off Nourish. We did Grendel recently already. This is always available, so you should be able to farm this up. And this is basically going to completely fix all of Octavia's energy needs. This is because Octavia specifically has the ability to replenish energy over 30 seconds. Nourish is going to multiply that by 4 because we have pretty high power strength on our Octavia build, which basically means that fixes our sustainability, so our ability to continue casting and using powers. For survivability, invisibility is king, and being as Octavia has the metronome, we can use this to basically stay invisible. Between Nourish regenerating our mana, there's no reason that metronome should come down, so therefore these two are going to work in tandem very, very nicely. I know this doesn't cover everything, but with every Warframe effectively having its own way of survival, such as Saren's Molt, Sevagoth's Gloom, Rhino Skin, Revenants, immunities, Protea with shield gating, there are so many different ways that you can increase your survivability that we could end up making this video like an hour long, and that is generally speaking not how long I like to make my videos. Something a little bit more general to speak about then. One of the most instant mods you should be putting on your Warframes is Rolling Guard. As you can see here, this makes you invulnerable for 3 seconds and removes all status effects. This actually allows you to roll through the arson status and not get knocked down, so very useful, and means you can drop all status off of yourselves immediately, and this should come in as a part of your survival method. So if your Warframe isn't Hildrin and doesn't have something like Pillage to remove status, you should have something like Rolling Guard so that you can remove status at will. Ordinarily, I would highly recommend that you use things like Umbral Intensify here instead of Normal Intensify to get some better stats on there, and if you have primed mods, get those on. I am not using those specifically because I haven't done an how to get primed mods video on the channel yet, and these can be an issue because they rotate around over time through the Void Trader each weekend. So I won't be using that for the purposes of this video. If you guys have those, you should definitely be using them, and if you don't have them, these should be a priority for you to get as soon as possible because things like primed continuity make a huge difference, especially with regards to sustainability and not having to use tons of energy all of the time. Next up, we need to talk about defeating enemy defenses. I've got some dummies here. Obviously, I'm going to show this in mission a little bit later, but I just want to show you guys in a static kind of way what difference certain concepts are going to make. This is going to be my standard Ignis build build for this video. If I shoot at this heavy gunner here, you can see that it's doing okay damage, and its armor is actually going down. You can see on the right hand side there, we are slowly melting away its armor, but it's not exactly great, is it? That's because when we are in Steel Path, enemies now have armor. Specifically Grineer. You can see Corpus, it doesn't matter so much. But the Grineer enemies have an incredible amount of armor, and we need to remove that. There are plenty of ways that we can do this. If you have a Warframe such as Hildrin, then you will have access to Pillage. This is going to take off a ton of the enemy's shield or armor. So abilities like this are actually very, very good. Styanax also has something similar to this. So some Warframes are blessed with it innately, and it's kind of cool because both Styanax and Hildrin's abilities are both their helmet abilities, so you can put these on other Warframes if you want to do this through a power. That is entirely a doable thing. There is also Caustic Strike in the Nehru tree, but I don't really like this very much, so I'm not going to recommend that we unlock that for this account particularly quickly. There is also the Corrosive Projection mod, which is going to take down a decent chunk of it as well. So if you have this and you are struggling with armor stripping, this is going to give you a bit of a boost. But something that everybody has access to is getting the Epitaph. This is very early on in the Railjack missions, and it is already in the playlist, so everybody should have it. And that's because this has a high status chance. So with good status mods on, we are over 100%, which means we can actually apply procs twice. And if we come down here to my elements that we have, that we're going to be using with the Quick Shot Radial, we can see that Heat will take up to 50% of the armor off. Corrosive will take up to 80% of armor. So obviously between those two procs, we can take all of the armor off. And Radiation is actually going to get extra damage against Grineer armor, the ferrite armor that Grineer are using. To compound with this, what we're actually going to do on the Ignis build, so now that you guys can see what we're doing here, is we're actually going to, it obviously comes with heat naturally, but we're going to do Viral. This is going to multiply the amount of damage we're doing by a lot because we are going to do high status on this as well. We could put something like extra crit on here as well if we wish to. This isn't supposed to be an ideal build. This is supposed to be an example to give you guys an idea as to what you can be doing. You're going to see here, we now have the galvanized mods on, and that's because as we are defeating enemies, we're actually going to get even more damage than you'll see on screen right now. As you can see right here, we get plus 80% status chance, and then on kill, we get 40% direct damage per status type affecting the target for 20 seconds. That's massive. So once we defeat an enemy that's got tons of status on, we're going to get a huge direct damage bonus, which I believe actually directly penetrates the armor, which is just going to make it that much easier to take enemies down. Galvanized chamber basically going to outperform normal split chamber in pretty much all of the time. All of that should lead to us having a pretty good result, as we'll see now. Test number 2. We are going to go ahead and we're going to use the Epitaph here to spread some status and then see how we do with the Ignis Wraith. As you can see, damage is way, way quicker. And enemies are actually going to go down now. Of course, these are level 170 and are pretty tough enemies. So ordinarily, that's not what normal enemies are going to look like. That is one defense type defeated. And because that took a little long to kill those, I want to show you guys why this is going to look so good a little bit later on. Because when we drop Octavia's 5, we're actually going to multiply our damage up by quite a lot. Just because I know somebody's going to tune out and say, that's not even very much damage. Trust me, by the time we're through with Octavia, the damage is pretty real. The method that we just used to weaken those Grineer is called priming, just in case you guys ever hear that terminology anywhere else. That is what we just did. So we used the Epitaph, prime the enemies, finish them off with the Ignis Wraith. As you saw with the damage boost from the Amp, we were able to do pretty good damage, and the Nourish actually adds 75% more viral damage to the weapon as well. So that wasn't even like the max power that we can do with the weapons. So you can see that's actually going to do pretty well against the Grineer armor. The next thing that we need to defeat though is the big shields of the Corpus. I saw we were able to strip it down pretty easily there, but just so you guys can see how this is going to work as well. When it comes to your Corpus tiles then, you are actually going to be aiming to get toxin damage. This is so that we can deal damage directly to the health. It's probably a little bit overkill, but let's put something out there with the Tenet Archoplasmor. When it comes to toxic, as long as you have good status, and they're obviously not an Xmas, so they haven't got Overguard, it's pretty much going to punch straight through them, as you can see. In fact, there'll be pretty much nothing left. And that's without even using Amp at all. So when it comes to fighting against Corpus, Toxin is going to be king. With all of that said, let's go ahead and enter a mission. I'm going to go ahead and use Lith on Earth, everybody's favorite little grinding spot. And in fact, I think I'm going to go private because I don't want other people kind of getting in the way here. So I can show you guys that A, this build works, and B, the enemy realistically that we want to be farming to get the steel essence. Of course, this is basically a standard defense mission, and Octavia is going to turn this into a joke. Of course, for me, we're going to start set up by popping our Nourish, damage. Note that we have a cooldown on the energy pad, so make sure you get your use out of it. I'm going to go invisible, drop my orb, drop amp, and we can now basically just stand here and win the match. Octavia's powers are pretty much able, as you can see, to defeat most of the enemies, even with the armor on. Sorry, the Archiplasma is just too addictive to use. And all we need to do is make sure that we stay invisible. If we get caught out, we can roll in guard for the invulnerability. That way we can still get back to being invisible without taking any damage. And we can just basically stand here invisible, having an easy good time. Partway through, we're going to get attacked by a similar enemy to the Stalker, apart from a bit more interesting. They all have different powers, but I don't really know what they all do. We're going to make sure we've got fresh powers down. And if you have your on-call crew member, this is actually a very good time to be calling it. Make sure you get plenty of said priming done on it. And then we're going to go ahead and just absolutely nail it with the Archiplasma. Make sure you collect the item that it drops, because that is going to be your arcane for the mission. They spawn every like 3 to 4 minutes or something like this. So if you want to stay here for longer and farm more of them, you can do. And obviously they also drop the steel essence as well. And just in case you guys want to see this, sometimes at the end of a round, the guy will get stuck on the post there. We could probably keep him there and farm some extra steel essence if we wish to, but I'm going to choose not to do that right now. And now when we extract, we get to see that we have a nice new arcane. The arcanes that drop from these guys are actually very strong. You really do want them, because these basically can fill the gap of serration for you, thereby meaning that you can make your weapons even more effective, which is why this is important, especially if you want to be taking on higher level content. Now to show you where you spend that steel essence. It's actually very easy to explain. Go to any relay. I always go to the Pluto one just because that's my local hideout. Once you arrive, fast travel to Teshin. I'm not sure if you need to be in Steel Path mode for him to be a merchant, but I don't see why you would change out of Steel Path anyway. Coming over to Steel Path Honors, and this is where you can spend your steel essence. Note that some of this is on a rotation, I believe. Yeah, here we go. This is on a rotation. So if I wanted to just get 3 instant former right now, I could do that for 75, but I don't think I will be doing. So we'll keep that there for now. But the most important thing I need to show you in this video are the adapters and potentially the stance former for weaponry, but I don't really think that's too important for me right now. Just make sure you grab a couple of these, as these are going to allow us to now attach the arcanes to our weapons. In case it wasn't obvious at the beginning of the video, a full guide for arcanes will be coming out over the next couple of days. But for now, if you want to get those installed, all we need to do is go onto our weapon here. This 10 Archiplasma has been doing well enough, so let's go ahead and install a primary arcane adapter. We can then come into here and we'll get a menu of the arcanes that we currently have available. Something to note, depending on the weapon that you're using, we have primary deadhead. Each headshot kill is going to be 20% damage for 24 seconds, stacks up to 3 times, and we have 5% damage for 4 seconds, stacks up to 12 times. Notice that the total damage bonus for these is the same as is the primary dexterity one, so that's 10% for each melee kill for 20 seconds. So you can decide which one you find easier. Obviously with the 10 Archiplasma, it's probably going to be primary merciless, and as you can see here, we can also merge them together to make them more powerful, thereby meaning that my 10 Archiplasma is now looking pretty good. We're obviously going to come all the way down to level 5 here. That's going to be like, what's that, 30% times 12? Pretty good. 360% more damage. One last thing that I could show you guys as a tip is if you do want to start unlocking more of the map, but you're too lazy, like I'm a bit lazy kind of going around here, if you want a shortcut to other areas, we are still able to do alerts. So we could do, for example, like a relic and unlock a node on Ceres, because if we finish this like any other mission, that will unlock the node on Ceres. So if you want to like unlock one node on each planet so that you have one to farm the resources, you can do it that way so that you can do it nice and quickly, basically. If you want to reach the maximum mastery rank, you'll need to do every single node again. I plan on doing this with friends, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. We'll be covering arcanes. I hope that helps you out.